So I have 3 boys, and they range from 3, 7, and 10 this month. And so for the last 10 years almost, we have regularly had Legos pretty much on every surface of our house, every day of the week. It is both a source of pain, because if you've never had Legos in your home, you won't relate to this, but stepping on Legos, that's every day in my house. Every day wanting to sweep them into a garbage bin because I'm so tired of saying, pick up your Legos, put them in the playroom. Anyways, every single day almost, my kids are doing something with Legos from the moment they wake up to the moment it's time to go to bed. And when I watch them, they are busy imagining and creating in that space, constantly creating, constantly thinking about what comes next. What do we add on to what we've already created? So every day there's something new to show off. Every day there's something that looks like, hey, Dad, come look at this. And though I can't make sense of it, to them, it's this beautiful, building, or it's this torture chamber, or it's this. It goes and goes and goes, and it's so incredibly beautiful to watch. And it's especially beautiful to watch them come running to me and saying, look at what I created. Or I walk into the playroom and you see the delight on their eyes, in their face. And you see the desire in them to want me to join them and invited into that space. So I think they're stepping into something that is just intuitive. It's how we were created. There's something in these kids that tell me again and again that they are creators. And if you're sitting in this room, you are a creator. I think it's just core to who we are, that we are all creators. And I think there's also something else that they demonstrate, that we all want to have moments where both we and others around us revel in the things that we are creating. That we want to feel a sense of belonging and purpose in that process of creating. The people that I work with are constantly in that place of things being falling apart, or they're not creating what they wish they were creating. And so there's a level of discontent and pain associated with not creating things that they feel deeply connected to, or having something that they were creating taken from them. And that is part of the process of life too, the inevitability of change. It impacts us all, and it very much impacts the things that we create on a daily basis and the things tied to who we are. 7 years ago, actually a little bit further than that, 10 years ago, I started a business post-graduate school. It was a contracting business, painting, residential and commercial. The number one question I was asking at that time was, how do I make a living? I was graduating graduate school. I had school loans on the way. My wife just got pregnant literally 3 days after we decided let's pull the goalie. And I thought we'd have a little bit more of a runway to figure that one out. So pregnant, student loans on the way, a mortgage, money was constantly on my mind. How do I pay bills? So that led to starting a business, a painting business. I had familiar experience from doing that in college, was successful, paid off college doing a painting contracting business. So I thought I'll do that. Fast forward 3 years, almost 4 into the process. I have now graduated graduate school. I'm in a place that isn't all that pleasant. I was doing something that I fundamentally didn't feel like I moved out here to Seattle to do, which was be a painting contractor. I was feeding my stomach, and I was feeding the stomach of those that I love, paying bills, but I wasn't feeding my heart. Friends at that time talk about the level of cynicism and despair and hopelessness that they saw in me was rather significant. And rather envious of those that had figured it out, that had discovered what they really want to create in the world. So back in 2010, I fell from a roof while we were working one day. It was a day in September and kind of rainy the night before. It's one of those roofs that had shingle shake roof, really old. And the shingle broke out from underneath me, and I landed onto concrete and shattered my right ankle. The moment I stood up, I knew immediately that I had broken my ankle. But I thought it was going to be a, get a cast, be back on my feet, crutches for a while, and walking again 6 weeks later. And the doctor could see that look on my face, and he said, if you don't listen to what we're telling you, you could lose your foot. And that snapped me into focus, and it was about a 4.5, 5-month journey to get back on my feet. And you can imagine, for a family that relatively young, we had a 4-month-old and a 2.5-year-old at the time. Every single part of our life was disrupted, finances especially. My sense of purpose in the world was disrupted. I managed a business from my bed, and I had a great production manager, but it was during that time, in a lot of pain and agony, and all the swirling questions, and all of the unwanted emotions that come with those, where I was talking with a friend and said, I do not want to do this anymore. It was a demarcation. There was a before that statement, and there was an after that statement. And it led to a series of decisions and choices. But it really put me in a place that I would call a hallway, an in-between time. That's the space where all these different questions and unwanted emotions and challenges show up. If I was to sit with any one of you for a few minutes and just tell me about the 3 or 4 or 5 moments where you made some significant life decisions, where the story or the plot shifted, you would probably tell me about moments that had to do with leaving a job or getting fired from a job or starting a business and all of the things that came after some of those decisions. Some of them you chose, some of them were chosen for you. I didn't choose to fall off the roof. It happened to me, and a series of events took place afterwards that were rather unpleasant. You have these kinds of moments in your life, these hallway moments. And most of us don't like these hallway moments. We want nothing to do with the hallways. We think that they're an inconvenience at best and torture at its worst, right? And most of us would rather take any choice to get out of them than to stay in them and wait in them. And so we need a process to know how to get through them. Change is inevitable, but transitions are not. Transition is that discipline that takes something that has changed in your life, rather internally about what you believe, or externally that's happened in your life. That's change. Transition is that discipline of making meaning out of the change. It is internalizing it and moving out from that space to understand who you're supposed to be and how you're supposed to move through all the complexities that come with the change. So, transition is not guaranteed, but change is. This is a good example. Does anyone know, you all know the movie, Napoleon Dynamite? This is a great example of someone who has not transitioned. He still is in high school, right? He has not metabolized what it means to be done, what it means to move on to the next. He has not transitioned. Transition is that discipline that helps us grow and deepen our character. Even if it's painful, it's designed to be there for a purpose, to grow and deepen our character, and hopefully our sense of purpose and joy in the world, as it puts us in touch with the things that matter most. So I borrow quite often from an author. His name's William Bridges. And just to talk briefly about the phases of a transition, and I would say that this is true of every transition, whether you're starting a business, or you're bringing life into the world as a parent, or you're a school teacher starting or ending a year, or you're anyone who's decided to create anything. There is a process of transition, and to move through a transition well holds these 3 elements. So endings, which hold some level of loss and letting go. This is a time when you're honest about what's over. This is a time when you look at what really is happening in reality, you begin to name it, you name what's true about today and is no longer available or possible. You name what is needed for your life moving forward. You look at what you can have and what you can't have anymore. It's really to connect you to the emotions the feelings, the thoughts that are appropriate at that time in your life. The next phase of a transition is what I would call the neutral zone. It's a space of waiting and not knowing. It's learning how to hope without killing it or aborting it. We don't like waiting, right? We don't like waiting. If you've had kids, you know what it's like to watch them wait for things that they really, really want. This is a time for experimentation. This is a time for listening to what is it that your desires are telling you you want and what you most want to create in the world. And what could you do in the way of experimenting that moves you forward through the in-between? And then, of course, the third phase is the new beginning. We all want the thing that is brand new, the thing that is on the other side of the transition, the thing that is on the other side of the hallway, the door that opens up into a brand new story. We want to take that business idea that happens in the hallway. We want to take that new project that was birthed in the hallway, and we want access to that room as quickly as possible. We want to get into that room where everything feels like it is exactly what we want. But that is not often how it goes. So I was thinking about, like, how do I share a story that is about setbacks and obstacles, which is quite often what the hallways hold. It's not a clean hallway like the one in the picture beforehand. It's filled with quite a bit. So about, let's see, 2 years ago, I did a fundraiser for our nonprofit. And we did extremely well that night. We raised more money than I thought we would. We did about $40,000. And I walked out of that night just thrilled by the results and wondering, what are we going to do? I thought maybe we'd do about half of that. And so what happened in the days and weeks to follow was this series of events that ultimately led us to this space down here. And a vision began to form. Like, we thought, okay, what if we created a space that was about learning experiences that were going to be all 4 seasons of transition, and we would find facilitators that would help do this, and they would each bring their expertise to that space, and fundamentally people would just not be there to listen to someone talk for 4 hours, but they would be there to engage one another in that space of transition. And so it led us to finding this space and launching the PIER Learning Center, which is an element of Liminal Space. And about 3 or 4 months after that, I was contacted by a former client who wanted to join us as our first employee. I was thrilled. I was thrilled that she wanted to join. She was going to move up here from Texas. And so she did. That August, she arrived, and we began the process of creating this next phase of Liminal Space. And the work was good. We started to build, and things were happening. And then about 4 months in, the strain of a lot of different things, but namely, her parents' health started to fail. And I could see that look in her eye of how difficult it was for her to be here while her parents were in Texas. And then in January, she told me that she was going to move back to Texas. It was devastating, because of all of that time and energy that I had put forth into that relationship to not only build it and create a trust relationship that we can create together, but all the work to train someone to get them up to speed. That's a tremendous amount of energy and time. And it felt like a leg sweep. It felt like a huge setback. It was an enormous obstacle that was painful to address. And it led me to what I would call resistance, unhelpful self-talk. Maybe it has something to do with my leadership. Maybe it had to do with just how I was leading her, and she didn't feel there was enough good here for her to stay committed while also being at home or making trips home to see her parents. Maybe it had something to do with just the fact that the organization just wasn't inspiring to her. It led me to believe that maybe this isn't going to work. It started to really turn inward and rather dark. Very discouraging. And it also led me to make some statements around like, see, here you are again, shouldering the weight of the responsibility of this idea on your own. And it's all up to you now, again. Again, not a very pleasant place to be. And then, of course, you can imagine it's easy to be distracted in that space. It's easier to be on Facebook, seeing what others are doing. And of course, that also leads you to that space, or leads me to that space of envy. Because everyone loves to post what they're doing well on Facebook, right? It's so that. You can leave, I don't know if I've heard a single person walk away from Facebook saying they feel good about their life. Right? It's not meant for that. So these forms of resistance often show up in these hallway moments of life. If you've started a business, I just was imagining, John, all the stories you could tell of things that did not go well. And we all have those stories. If you've ever created something out of nothing, including children especially, you know well about obstacles and resistance. As change is inevitable for everyone, so is resistance. As creators, we know what it means to feel resistance. If you've never read this book, I would highly recommend it as fellow creators. Do the Work by Steven Pressfield. Has anyone heard of him? It's a short read. It's an excellent read. It's all about resistance and what it means to be a creator who has to face resistance every day of their life. Resistance's greatest hits. This is directly from the book. The following is a list in no particular order of those activities that most commonly elicit resistance. The pursuit of any calling in writing, painting, music, film, dance, or any creative art, however marginal or unconventional. 2, the launch of any entrepreneurial venture or enterprise for profit or otherwise. 3, any diet or health regimen. 4, any program of spiritual advancement. 5, any activities whose aim is the acquisition of chiseled abs. 6, any course or program designed to overcome an unwholesome habit or addiction. 7, education of any kind. Any act of political, moral, or ethical courage, including the decision to change for the better some unworthy pattern of thought or conduct in ourselves. 9, the undertaking of any enterprise or endeavor whose aim is to help others. 10, an act that entails commitment of the heart, the decision to get married, to have children, to weather a rocky patch in a relationship. 11, the taking of any principled stand in the face of adversity. In other words, any act that rejects immediate gratification in favor of long-term growth, health, or integrity. I think fundamentally, the end goal of resistance is to get you to stop creating, to get you to say, that's good enough. I won't go any further. The risk is too great. The pain is too costly. I don't want to go any further. It's to get you to stop doing particularly what you're designed to do in the world, in your unique way to be a creator. Maybe that's as a business owner, as an entrepreneur. Maybe that's as a parent or a spouse or a friend or a community builder or a friend who helps another friend build and start something. We are all creators, and there are unique forces in each of our lives that are trying to get us to stop creating. My question for you is, do you know the unique smell and flavor of your resistance? Do you know what are those things that invite you to set the pen down, to stop creating? Things that are designed specifically to kill hope and desire, the very fuel of your imagination. So I'm in the helping profession. I help people. So obviously I'm in that list of 11, as I'm sure you were probably all able to find yourself in one of those 11. I am definitely in that list. So there was about this time last year, I was in this process of creating a retreat for a group, a faith community here in North Seattle, and there would be roughly 200 or so people in this retreat. And I was in that place of just profound stuck. I could not find sentences to put together to create the structure that I needed for this retreat. And for me, when I get into that place, I feel often like I'm trapped in a corner and I can't get out. And I feel that weight of responsibility and the imagining of 200 sets of eyes on me, needing to be led through 3 days of a retreat. Like, this is the stuff I create, right? I'm supposed to create experiences that take people into the particularity of their life. And in this day, I was being crippled by some of the pressure, the weight of the world that was on my shoulder. It was particularly lonely. Stuck in that office. At that time, Dick wasn't even next door, so I couldn't even yell to ask for help. But I was profoundly stuck and feeling again that weight. And all the pressures and the voices were churning. You know, this isn't going to be good. You don't know what you're doing. Just stop. Find a way to get this thing off your plate. Give it to someone else. Tell them you can't do it. Anything to show up there and not have it go well. So what did I do in that space? I took a walk. I got up from my desk, which I often do when I'm in this place. I was certainly frustrated. And I took a walk. And I went down here to the waterfront and I sat down on a bench. And I started with one question. And as I was feeling this weight and the tears that started to well up in my eyes as I was thinking about all that I was going through and how familiar this felt, I started to ask this question, what is it? What really is it that I'm facing? And I heard a thought that occurred in my mind that said, just go ask for help. Just go ask for help. Go talk to Lori. Lori is the employee that I had that moved back to Texas. For me, one of the profound things that I can do in order to get unstuck when I'm facing resistance is to go talk to anyone about that unique bind that I'm in, to unload. Community is a huge element for me, to help me see that actually I'm not alone. There are others who actually not only want to listen, but they have good ideas. So I got up and I go over to Lori and I say, I need you to just listen for a few minutes, and I need you to give me some thoughts in response. I'm not looking for brilliance, just help me see what I'm not seeing. 10 minutes later, after we were talking, she said, I hear all that you're trying to do, and what if you did this and this and this, and took that out. And suddenly, I began to see a way forward. I have been in this place again and again and again as an entrepreneur, and I've come to learn that there's a few things that get me out of this stuck place. Community is one of them. Another one is self-care. One friend recently challenged me when I was feeling just some of the loneliness of the work that I do and the stuckness of where I was at this week and shouldering the weight of the world on my shoulders. He said, maybe instead of for the next hour you stewing in this space, what if you actually went to the gym that you're a member of and just took a run? Because I know that you pretty consistently get in touch with something that's a little bit deeper and true about how you see yourself in the world. And it was a challenge. It was a provoking nudge. So I went and I ran. And I came back clearer in my thinking and more grounded in my sense of who I am as a business owner, as someone who's to help people through their lonely in-betweens. These are all disciplines. Knowing what it means to ask for help. Knowing what it means to identify your unique blend of resistance and what it means to then move in the face of that resistance and make choices that are more kind and more appropriate to your life, and ultimately helping you become that creator that you're supposed to become more of in the world. Does anyone know what this picture is of? It looks like a nut, but it's actually a coriander seed. It's really, really small, right? If you've ever seen a coriander seed, you'd have a hard time picking it up if you have thick fingers like I do. Coriander seed is one of those images that's provided to us in this story in the Bible that I absolutely love. In Numbers 11, we learn about these people that are going through this in-between time. They're going through what is a desert, right? They just left this land that held a lot of slavery for them for centuries, and they've been thrust into this wilderness in between. And they have been charged as a people to build something brand new, to create. But before they can create, they've had to go through this in between. And they've got to shed some old beliefs that have not worked and won't work moving forward. And in that in-between place, they are given a food to eat every day. Do y'all know this story, right? The manna that they're given to eat in that in-between desert? That word manna literally translates a question. The question is what? What is it? Now, I think that's brilliant. The people name their food a question. So every single day of this building process, they are picking up a question. And this is not easy food to pick up. It's described as coriander seed with a resin-like property. Imagine picking this up every day and you're eating that question, what is it? What is it? What is it? It's a question that invites honesty. It's a question that invites you to be alert to what's going on in your life, to really ask the question, not only where you are, but where do you think this is going? What do you want for the story moving forward? What's holding you back? I think we're quite often asking, why did this happen? Why is this resistance present? Why is this problem occurring in my marriage, in my business? And those are good questions to be asking. But really, I think we're wrestling with the what questions. Now what? Where do I go from here? What is it that is holding me back? What is it that I want? How do I find that path forward? What is the path? So every day, if you're a business owner or you're someone who's creating at home with your kids, or you're a teacher, or you're an architect, or realtor, what does it mean to show up to that question, what is it? What is it? In the face of whatever resistance you encounter that day, whatever obstacles or setbacks, because it's inevitable as a creator that you're going to encounter them. What does it mean for you to show up to that what question? And consider, what are those choices that you can make that might bring you to a more grounded place? It turns out there's 7 of these things that we've studied over the years. I'll just briefly go through them all. Action, creating thoughtful forward momentum for those that are paralyzed. Resilience, shaping a persevering perspective. Self-honesty, clearing away deception. Faith, connecting to God's larger story. Community, finding strength through relationship. Self-care, prioritizing kindness for our bodies that are especially under strain. And then the last, planning, translating a vision into a manageable plan. Again and again, I can, at least these 3, as I've spoken to some of that today, for me, I can say consistently that self-care is one of those things that keeps me grounded in that question, what is it? Community does that for me. I have a group of guys that I get together with every week, and yes, we drink beer, and that's great. But we are really working to get into that question, what is it, and who are we in that question as we ask it, and who do we sense we're supposed to become in our lives, both in our work that we do, in our marriages, and in our friendships. For me, also, planning is one of those activities that I need to grow that muscle in. I was just talking with John about that, planning. What does it mean to take a sense of vision for the future and translate that into actionable steps? How do I build that discipline? If you are interested, we did create an assessment. It's called the Liminal Strengths Assessment. There's a coupon code there that you can use, just MPC. You can take the assessment. I believe it gets you 50% off. But it'll measure all 7 of these dimensions. And from our research, it shows that If you focus in on one of these dimensions as a way to grow who you are and how you ask that question, what is it, during a transition, especially for those of you that are in your own business, it'll keep you more grounded and more attentive and alert to what the transition is inviting you to as a creator that's desiring more impact in the world, greater sense of joy and purpose in that work as you keep building. This was the time when I thought we were doing the table question. So I'll skip over that and on to this last quote. Between stimulus and response, there is a space, and in that space is our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. Viktor Frankl. If you know Viktor Frankl, his life, he went through quite a bit in the Nazi war camps and survived, and wrote this afterwards in one of his texts. Imagine what it would take to write that statement. Imagine all the what is it's that he's asked, right? So I don't know your life. I know a few of you a little bit, but I know that if I sat with each of you for a few minutes, I would get a chance to hear profound desire and longing for your life, a chance to hear how you want to create in the world, a chance to hear what matters most to you, a chance to hear what is the signature way in which you create. And if we're really honest, what are those unique forces that come against your creativity? Most often, those are acutely felt in that in-between place. And it is a profound opportunity, if we're willing to slow down and ask that question, what is it, especially in community, to discover our own transformation, to discover what we could become more of as creators in this world. So I leave you with that thought and invite you to the conversation in the particularity of the way that you create in the world. What is it? Who are you called to become more of as you ask that question? Thanks for having me.